Today we're quilting this quilt. This is a robot quilt from my line Robo Boogie, with the fabrics from my line Robo Boogie, and I'm going to give this a overall quilt design with straight lines. Let's get quilting! This robot has this lovely yellow fabric and I have this Orifil yellow thread. It's a 50 weight and it blends in nicely in the yellow fabric and it gives a little pop of color, tiny pop of color, since it's not such a thick thread on the white fabric. So it's going to be an overall design with this yellow thread. So the plan to quilt these is first make some lines, markings on here, and then follow those lines to quilt. And the pattern that I'm doing is triangles. So what I'm going to do is mark horizontal lines on the quilt, and then mark lines on an angle in this direction and on an angle in this direction. And I will first do all the horizontal lines. Then I will do all the lines in one direction, and then I can take those crossings of those lines to quilt the lines in the other direction. And that will leave me with triangles. For the marking I use a hero marker, and this will just make a crease in the fabric and it won't leave any ink markings or anything, just a little crease. And of course a ruler. And then to start I use lines in my quilt. So the legs of the little robot are not completely straight, and also this line is a little bit tilted. So I am going to use the seams over here. So here's a seam between the border and the robot, and that is well, a straight line perpendicular to the sides. And also here I have a seam, and that's also straight. So I think I'll start, well, first I need to decide how big of the triangles I'm going to make. I think maybe 2 inches would be a nice size. Either 2 inches or 1.5. Let's go with deciding on the spot here. So 2 inches would be here, then the triangle would be this size. Yeah, that's okay. That is okay. I am going with the 2-inch triangles. So then I'm lining up my ruler on this 2-inch line over here. Oh, I'm doubting my choice. 2-inch, still quite big. This quilt is not so large. It's also not a mini quilt, but 2 inches. Okay, I'll mark a 1.5-inch line and then see how that looks. So what you do, you place your ruler and then you gently make a crease in the fabric. Yeah, 1.5 inch is what I'm going with, and continue to make the crease all the way to the other side. And also here I need to do a little bit. There we go. So that is the first horizontal marking that I did. Let me zoom in to show you what that looks like. So this is the marking that you get. This was the test line I did. So you can see it, but it's not that well, it doesn't, you won't notice this crease anymore that I'm not going to use, but you won't notice that when you're done quilting. And as soon as you give this one wash, all the creases will be disappearing, of course. So I love this method of marking the quilt. Now I need to make more and more lines, and as long as I can use the ruler and a side seam, I will. So I'm not going to mark off 1.5 inch from the line I just marked, but I'm going to use the 3-inch mark, so 2 times 1.5, on my seam over here. I just like to follow the references on my quilt, like seams, for as much as possible. But of course, my ruler is only so big. So when I finish with this next to marking, so now I'm putting it on 4.5 inch. And then it will be on 6 inch. So that is the complete width of the ruler. So after that, you either follow these lines or you grab a bigger ruler and continue with that. But what I now like to do is I will just follow the markings. So I place 1.5 inch on top of this, and then use this side seam to check if my ruler is straight. So I put this on this seam, border seam over here, and then I put this line, the 1.5 inch, on the top marking that I just did. And that way you just mark the whole quilt with horizontal lines. Now all the horizontal lines are marked. It's time to set up my sewing machine, wind up some bobbins, and get started to quilt this little robot friend. And if you're curious about this fabric collection, well, this is my very first fabric collection. Yes, I'm very excited about that. This fabric collection is called Robo Boogie, and it is the very first Shirido fabric collection. I designed it with Benartex, and it's available worldwide. So go ask your local quilt shop and let them order some Robo Boogie if they haven't done already, and get yourself some rainbowy happy fabrics. There we go. I have the yellow thread on top, and I have a grey thread on the bottom because I have grey fabric. On the backing of my quilt, I'm going to use some quilting gloves. Not that I'm doing free motion, but it just gives me a little extra grip when I'm holding on to the quilt. And I have put on my walking foot. And the walking foot is just nice and wide, and it really guides the quilt very well underneath the machine. And to start with the quilting, I start kind of in the middle. Not exactly in the middle, that's not that important, but kind of in the middle, and then from there I work my way to the outside. So I'm going to position the quilt on my lap and on the right and left side over here. Make sure the backing fabric is not folded. That happened to me too often, that I have the backing fabric folded back and that you stitch it double. Then you have to rip it out again, of course. So there we go. Let's bring up that bobbin thread. Oops. So there we go. All set to start quilting. Oh yes, before I start quilting, I need to decide on the stitch length. And this is set to a standard size, but I always like to make it a little bit bigger when I do my quilting. So I guess I'll set it to 3. And then we are ready to go. And as you can see, what the walking foot does is that it helps with its upper gripper. So it's kind of a two-part foot. And that way I don't really need to do much. I just have my hands, let me show you, I just have my hands here on the side. And then I just guide the quilt with the speed of the machine itself. Whoops. Yeah, there we go. So just slow and smooth. It's a walking foot and it doesn't need to go that fast. So to get the most pretty stitches, just go slow so you don't get any puckers or unwanted folds at the back of your quilt. And my hands are outside of the frame now because I'm preventing the quilt from pulling here. So I'm lifting it up over here, and then I still have enough room to steer. So I don't need to have my hands all the way up here like with free motion quilting, but I'm going in a straight line and the walking foot is doing its thing. So I'm just holding it here and guiding the quilt with the speed of the machine. This quilt is glue basted, so I don't need to remove any pins, and I kind of trust that everything is basted well enough so that the backing stays in place with the batting and the front of the quilt. There we go. Going to enter that white fabric again, leaving a lovely yellow line with that bright and happy thread. And when I get to the end, I just push my heel down so I cut my thread. Oh, that is lovely and happy and bright. Let me show you up close. There we have the first stitches. Oh, I love how this looks. It blends here within the yellow fabric, and then here it gives a pop of color on the white background. That is just perfect. Okay, I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue with this and make all the horizontal lines, and then I'll be back when it's time to do the diagonals. Now that we have all these lovely horizontal lines, it's time to make some diagonal lines to make the first side of the triangles. And for that, I am using my ruler, and on the ruler there are angles. So here we have 30, 45 and 60, and we need a 60-degree angle. Let's see, is that correct? Yes, I am going to use a 60-degree angle. What that means is that that 60 line that's over here, that I'm going to line that up with one of the horizontal lines. And that means that the ruler and the line are making a 60-degree angle. And I can, let me just mark 2 of those so you can see what we're about to do. So when you have a 60-degree line here, or am I in focus? No, where am I? Yes, this one. Can you see that one? Yes, you can see it. So here is that line, and when you do that on the other side as well, so here's the point. I'm lining up my 60-degree line over here with the horizontal line. When you do that in the other direction as well, you have a lovely triangle marked over here. So that's the idea, that I'm going to make all these long lines and making a grid of triangles. So it's quite some work to do that all with marking. Another option you can do is use a distance thingy on your sewing machine. So the walking foot also has a distance thing, and you can space that up with the lines. But I'm first going to mark out a few lines and see if I can use that distance spacer. But first I need to do some basic markings. So I marked one side of all the diagonal lines, and what I did was I marked intervals of 6 inches. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. And I didn't mark the markings in between, except for the middle row. So here I did 1.5 inch intervals. And for the rest of the quilt, I marked just the guides every 6 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quilt these first using as well. This is a guide and the guide bar on my walking foot. So I can really set that guide to exactly 1.5 inch. And then I'm going to fill up the spaces between the 6 inches with my guide bar. So I installed the guide bar on my walking foot, and you can set how wide it should be. And I also did one diagonal line, this yellow one over here. So the idea is that I place my walking foot on the next line that I marked, and that I then place my guide bar on this yellow line over here. So that is going to help me guide me. And now I'm going to sew the next couple of lines. I've marked this one, this one, this one, this one. So I'm going to sew those using both the guide bar and the walking foot, and then position this in the right space for me to make those 1.5 inch lines apart. So I did a few lines and I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm just going to trust the guide bar, and my lines are a little bit wobbly, but every 6 inches I have a guideline marked. So every 6 inches I will just follow this line, and then it kind of resets the spacing between them. So yeah, let's quilt all the diagonals. So after you do the first set of diagonal lines, you have this kind of pattern. And this is also lovely, so you can leave it with this. But I would like to make this into triangles. And what you need to do then is make the lines in this direction. And for that you can of course do markings, but the distance between these, I think it's small enough. So I will just travel from point to point to point. And the great thing about that is that when these lines are not exactly 1.5 inch apart, or these ones, then this line will become a little bit wobbly, because these intersections won't perfectly line up. But that's no problem, and nobody will notice that. You will notice it more when the 3 lines don't cross each other at the same point than when these lines are not exactly straight. So just go ahead from point to point in the other diagonal direction, and then you will have your triangles. So when sewing, I will just pay attention to this part on my walking foot, that is the center, and I will guide that through these intersections. It's the next day and I finished the quilt. So this little robot is all done and quilted. All the triangles are quilted, and I love the texture that it gives. And also the bright yellow. So I usually don't use a lot of color in the background when I'm quilting, or color on background. Mostly I go for a white or a light gray, so everything blends in. But with my robot quilts, I pick these bright colors to go over the white, and it works so perfectly because that yellow now spreads over the white, making it even more colorful and happy. So I love that thread choice and also the quilting. It's just a lovely quilt. So this quilt pattern, the triangle robot and the circle robot and the other one, I will put them here. These are all available now to get at your local quilt shop or in the Sugary Doo web shop. So all the foundation paper piecing patterns for these are available, and also my fabric line, and they're all made with my very first fabric line called Robo Boogie. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I hope you learned something and you're going to give this quilt pattern a try. I had a lot of fun quilting it and making this video. I hope to see you again next week in a new one. Bye!